Hi, and welcome to another Kickstarter Wednesday roundup from Rule of Carnage. We've got a whole bunch of STL files, quite a few model campaigns, and one really interesting accessories campaign this week. And it's that accessories campaign that we're going to start off with. It's Titans Terrain by Tabletop Titans. So what this is it's a set of pop-up cardboard terrain mats that you unfold that become buildings that are suitable for all sorts of game systems, really work really well for everything from Warhammer 40k through to historical combats. So the whole point of it is that the whole set of terrain that would fill out any number of tables really will fit into a sort of standard Euro board game size box. It's $110, £83 for the core pledge. And literally you unfold these mats. I think about 6 to 8 of them would fill out a standard size tabletop. The terrain's right there. You can get set up very quickly, relatively cheaply, with no painting or constructing, and you can very easily box these up, take them to a club, take them to wherever you're playing. It's a really interesting concept to just get a full filled out terrain packed urban or building centric tabletop in seconds for a reasonably low price. So if you're going on the move a lot, if you've struggled to fill out a tabletop, if you struggle to get scenery painted, I know a lot of us do, give this one a look over. It's a really smart idea and it might well fix a whole bunch of problems you might be struggling with. So on to the model campaigns. And first of all, this week we've got Wasteland Pugs and the Glory Hogs Go Metal by Jamie Loft. So this is some proper old school miniatures. They're quite unusual. They're anthropomorphic pigs and dogs and things of that nature. It's very much definitely a sort of wasteland mutant gang in some sort of post-apocalyptic universe. There's not a massive number of models, but they're really characterful, very old school vibe to them. And if you're playing smallish skirmish games in a sort of mutant apocalyptic setting, with a bit of a sense of humor, a bit of edge to it, gives these models look. They're packed with character. They're really nice looking models, and yeah, if you want something a bit unusual in your post-apocalyptic setting, I don't think you'd be disappointed. So next up we've got the Fling Nation themed fantasy football team by Liam. So as I've mentioned before on Kickstarter, there's never a lack of fantasy football Blood Bowl style teams, and there's also never too much of a lack of halfling based projects, and this is both of those favorites mashed together. Some very big belly out halflings playing Blood Bowl. If you're a Blood Bowl player, if you enjoy your halflings, if you've got a bit of a sense of humor, you like some models that are a bit quirky, a bit kooky, and give this campaign a little look over. It's got a lot of character to it. Really nice, neat looking models that you will not see on other tabletops. You won't bring out your models and see somebody else who's got the same thing as you on the other side. So give this one a look over. Following up from that, we've got Pack of Dogs by Jorge Fernandez Sanz. So it's very much what it sounds like, resin printed pack of dogs. It's not going to fit into every single tabletop and every single miniatures collection, but you know, if you're looking for something a bit sort of on the edge of a miniatures collection, if you want something to fill out an urban or civilian population, or just give a bit of feel to an environment. To be fair, there are plenty of games that have dogs or animal companions, things of that nature, and there's not always a massive range available. These are some very nice, characterful looking dogs that could just add that little bit of extra spice and verisimilitude to your tabletop. So give that one a quick look over if that's the sort of thing you might be interested in. And last of all of our models campaigns this week, we've got 5 Years in the Rotten City by Rotten Factory. So this is a whole bunch of miniatures and terrain with a very strong, I'll say, a sort of Nurgle cultist feel to them. There are some models, some sketches of models in the campaign that would work very nicely for a Slaanesh cult, if that's the sort of thing you're more leaning towards. But there's a lot of very characterful, rotten, diseased, warrior-looking creatures in there. If you want a bit more sort of character, a bit more expansion to, and it's not obviously just going to be Games Workshop Nurgle diseased warriors, but that's going to be, I would imagine, a large part of the market. But these are really sort of, lovely is probably the wrong word to use for the sort of disgusting, deformed, bulbous, rotting, diseased creatures, but there's a whole lot of character in there, a whole lot of detail, and yeah, I think they would grace any Nurgle or just mutant diseased force that you're thinking of putting together on the tabletop. So give that one a look over if you love a diseased mutant on your tabletop. So moving on to STL campaigns, we've got quite a few this week, so we'll crack right on. First of all, we've got the Athenian Army 32mm STL files for 3D printing miniatures by Games Mythology. So this is a whole army's worth of Athenian miniatures, so hoplites, archers, but also Greek mythological creatures. So some really nice looking cyclopses in there, gods, monsters, all sorts of bits and pieces. There are some printable bases as well, square bases as well, which is always nice to see. So there's a whole massive range of miniatures in this campaign. If you're interested in historical gaming, if you're interested in fantasy gaming, if you're interested in just spicing up your bases even, take a little look at this campaign. There's a whole range of stuff available there. If you're thinking of gaming in any sort of fantastical Greek, Roman approximated age, or if you just take the Athenians themselves, they work perfectly well in a pure historical setting. So there's a lot to look at in that campaign, a lot of options. Give it a look over if you're interested in Greek mythological or straight up Greek historical gaming. So next up on the STL files, we've got Space Conscript by Triple Spire Workshop. So I bring up this campaign partly because it's for 15mm scale models, which is not a scale that you see an enormous amount of the time. So obviously with STL files, you can print them at various scales, but it's nice to have something that's built specifically for that scale. The detail's going to work a little bit better. It's just going to mean that you don't lose details when you crunch it down, or they become too cartoonish when blown up. So these are general space, futuristic sci-fi warfare soldiers. It also have tanks, sort of sci-fi tanks, vehicles, sort of emplacement weapons, a whole range of sci-fi armies, soldiers, weapons, armor, etc. If you're thinking of gaming in a 15mm scale in a sci-fi setting, then this is the campaign for you. So check it out. So following on from that, we've got the Bloodforged Legion by Pariah Miniatures. So a minute ago, I was talking about a campaign that would work very nicely for a Nurgle-themed army or force. Well, this is a campaign for you if you're looking for a Khorne-themed force. Obviously, again, these miniatures could be used for any sort of demonic force of creatures, but definitely these would work very nicely proxying for Khornate demons, for bloodthirsters, and all sorts of Khorne demons, creatures of that type. There's a lot of the miniatures here would slot very, very neatly in if you're thinking of proxying out some GW forces. Or, like I say, if you're just looking for a sort of solid, demonic-looking force of violence and fury, the Bloodforged Legion will be right up your street. So next up, we've got The Valiant and the Vile by Adamant Arsenal. So these are a couple of modular 3D builder kits. So they come in bits and pieces, much like you'd find in a normal sort of plastic sprues, but you combine them digitally and then print them out to have a very sort of bespoke force for your army. And, you know, referring back to the fact that we had a Nurgle appropriate models campaign, the vial of this campaign are a set of STL files that would work very nicely for another diseased Nurgle mutant gribbly army. This one, as you might have guessed from the title, comes with the Valiant. So there's sprues or digital sprues for good guys, the heroes, the armored people fighting back said gribbly forces of horrible diseases. So if you're interested in a bit of 3D kit bashing, even if you don't necessarily want to put together these specific STL digital files, if you're thinking of kit bashing, there's a lot of bits and pieces in there that you could carry over to another set of STL miniatures, give them a little tweak, give them a little twist. As I do say, sometimes with STL files, it's always nice to sort of pop them, as it were, digitally on the shelf and be able to pull them out of that digital bits box when you want to give something a little bit of a extra personality or an extra something. And this was a set of files that would be absolutely perfect for that. If you're interested in getting into some digital kit bashing, some digital construction of STL files, give this campaign a look over. It'll give you everything that you need to get started in that part of the hobby. So next up for our STL files campaigns, we've got Port Maldorn Docks 3D printable models by Quinn Zahaski. So this is a terrain campaign, and it is a terrain campaign for a set of docks. So a set of piers, quite modular set of buildings. If you're looking for something in and around the waterways, the wharfs, if you're interested in games like Carnival, anything with a sort of Cthulhu Lovecraftian feel to it, where you need to have some terrain that's going to go out over a waterfront and allow people to wander out into a pier and get pulled off into the water. This will work very, very neatly. They're sort of wooden docks, so they could work very happily in pretty much any period, and you can quite happily print them out, build yourself a whole Docklands waterfront tabletop with these modular pieces that look really nice, very practical, very solid. Give that one a look over if you're thinking of having a miniature grabbed by some beastie from the Black Lagoon. So following on, and next up from that, we've got Blizzard Bluffs by Zikit. So this is, again, a terrain campaign. It's buildings, and as you might have guessed from the title, it's got a sort of wintry feel to it, a sort of frozen, snowbound north to it. So they're really nice buildings. There's a whole range of them. You can build yourself quite a little nice little northern town here. If you are getting to a point where you've got enough terrain that you want to give a little bit of character to where your tabletop is being set, whether it's somewhere frozen as opposed to somewhere full of deserts or forest, wherever it happens to be, give this one a look over. There's a few buildings, I think, dotted in around your normal terrain set would give a really nice little extra feel to it. Give a real sense of where you're gaming. And if you are playing Frostgrave, obviously this is going to fit in very, very neatly when you're trying to fill out one of those packed in Frostgrave city tabletops. So take a look at Blizzard Bluffs if you're looking to adventure in the frozen city. So next up, we've got Rise of the Halflings by Printable Scenery. So if you scanned over this one on Kickstarter, you might have passed it by. It advertises itself as being for about halflings and warlocks for role-playing Dungeons and Dragons and such like. Don't necessarily let that fool you. What it's got is some stunning terrain. There's Yeah, a handful of halflings, a few wizards. Probably not enough to fill out a significant force, although you could get yourself a small skirmishing group. But there's some really lovely terrain in there. But there's a set of treetop building set terrains for woodland folk. There are some really stunning sort of stone built city buildings. There's some great terrain there to be able to fill out a range of very unusual, very characterful tabletops. And yeah, there are some really nice halfling miniatures in there. Plenty to fill out, as say, a small skirmishing force, or dot a bit of character around a larger halfling force. But give this one a look over if you're looking for some tabletop buildings and some scenery, and particularly some unusual treetop buildings and scenery for, you know, would work just as well for high elves as for halflings, as for wood elves, as for Ewoks, if that's the way that you're inclined. So, you know, if you have passed over this campaign because maybe you're interested in halflings, maybe come back to it, give it a look over, check out the buildings. They're really, you know, nice files. So yeah, give that one a look over, check it out for the scenery as well as the miniatures. So following on from that campaign, we've got French Limber and Wagons by David Vasquez Fernandez. So this is an interesting miniatures STL campaign. It is very much, as the title of the campaign suggests, for a set of limberable cannons that can be limbered to horses. So cannons that can be hooked on and driven around by horses. If you are a GW player, you might remember the old Bronzino's Galper guns. It's got that sense to it. So it's worked very nicely for a large campaign setting where you've got your armies moving from spot to spot. Give you an option to build in some house rules for cannons that can be moved suddenly across the battlefield. And they're just fundamentally some really nice models for some very accurate historical wargaming going on. So check that one out if you're interested in anything Napoleonic, historical. If you just want to be able to move your cannons around the tabletop without having them mashed in by fast cavalry, give it a little look over. It's a nice set of models, great for historical, great for fantasy gaming in general. So following on from that, we've got Samurai Warfare Small Miniatures by, unsurprisingly, Small Miniatures. So as the campaign suggests, is a set of samurai models, mounted samurai on foot, Ashigari. What's interesting about this campaign is, again, it's 28mm available, but also 15mm scale available. So again, if you do play in 15mm a lot, there's not a huge range of campaigns and miniature ranges that cater to you. So if you are in that group of people who play 15mm historical Japanese samurai wargaming, this is absolutely the campaign for you. If you're just interested in playing something like Test of Honor, something of the general Warring States period, these are some nice models. There's a good solid range. You could put out a lot of models out quite quickly with this. If you're interested in 15mm gaming, you're going to want to, chuck out a fair number of models to get them onto the tabletop. This campaign will do you very nicely for 15mm gaming set in a Japanese, either historical or fantasy setting. So give it a look over. So following on from that one, we've got The Age of Napoleon 3D Models for 3D Printing Restart by Models for 3D Printing. So this is actually primarily a terrain campaign. It's buildings that would work very well in the Napoleonic era. That means that it's buildings that work for practically any Napoleonic, post-Napoleonic era, anywhere in Europe. So anywhere in the last, couple of hundred years across Europe, and probably a solid chunk of America. There's a huge range of buildings available in this campaign. There's a solid city's worth of buildings available in this campaign. If you're looking to set your game anywhere, certainly anywhere within Europe, anywhere within an urban environment, and if it's anything other than sort of extreme far future or dystopian settings, then there's going to be some models in this campaign that will work very nicely for your tabletop. So check it out, give it a look over. There's a huge range, a lot of options. Yeah, have a look at that one if you're looking for buildings and terrain for your tabletop, for almost any setting, frankly. Okay, so following on from that, we've got Bases Hot Madness Volume 2 3D STL miniature files by Modibake. So this is a whole bunch of printable 3D bases. Also, what's really nice is it's got a set of 3D printable movement trays for circular bases. I know there's a range of places that you can get these modular circular movement trays from. This one comes with a whole set of options for the bases themselves. And interesting, these come themed to a range of different styles. You've got horror, you've got aliens, cyberpunk, steampunk, modern streets. There's a whole range of different set areas, genres, tropes. Obviously, you could mix and match. They work very nicely crossed over with each other. So nearly last of all, penultimately of all, we've got Tiny Scrap Heaps of Doom by Anthony Salvati. So this is the first of our Pay What You Want campaigns for this week. It's quite a cute little campaign. It's small scale scrap heap built tanks. So if you're thinking of having something maybe a bit post-apocalyptic, a bit unusual, if you're thinking of gaming something to suggest a sort of Robot Wars style campaign tabletop, give this one a look over. It's a cute little campaign, some neat little files in there, and as I always say about these Pay What Your campaigns, it's going to be excellent value for money, because it's going to be exactly what you think is excellent value for money, because you're going to pay what you think it's worth paying for. And so last of all, and rounding up with our traditional Pay As You Want terrain campaign, we've got 3D printable windmill miniature by Tainted Saint Miniatures. Now, for a Pay What You Want terrain building campaign, this is a really nice looking miniature. Obviously, it's a windmill. It's modular. It can be taken apart, printed to be taken apart. It has interior features to it. It's going to work fantastically for a whole range of settings. It would work obviously very nicely in historical settings, rural, medieval, but you know what, it would work fantastically to put something a bit unusual, an extra bit of spice to a post-apocalyptic setting, a futuristic setting. Once those windmills have been built, they're around for all points after that. So there's really no era that this isn't going to fit in potentially to give a little bit of a feature to your tabletop. And again, it's a Pay What You Want campaign. It's going to be fantastic value for money, because it's going to be what you think is fantastic value for money for that model. So check it out, give it a look over. So thanks for watching. That's another Wednesday Kickstarter roundup from Rule of Carnage here. And until next time, I'll say goodbye. Thanks for watching.